Okay. Okay, we are just recording this so we can post on YouTube later for anyone who misses. My name is Lo. I am one of the social workers here.
And my name is EG. I'm another social worker that works here.
Perfect. And we are gonna just get started.
We're just getting our PowerPoint ready. We're excited to talk to you about just like an intro to social work and emotional regulation today.
How do I private? Okay.
We're just setting it up right now.
Oh, that's not what I want. Okay, well, we'll just get started.
Go ahead and get started. So, as we said, it'll be an intro to social work and emotional regulation. As you know, it's kind of a newer department within our company, and we're excited to kind of talk more about it. And today's objectives, it will talk about just like what is exactly clinical social work and what does it look like. Some like big emotions coaching, how does that look like, and what does that mean? More about emotional processing, the areas of treatment within social work, who qualifies for treatment, and when to refer and how does that work, and just all about emotional regulation. So this is a good gist of what we'll be going over today. And Lo will take us off with what social work is.
So social work, I kind of like to describe it as a form of mental health therapy. We really work on a lot of understanding what's going on with kids. So doing an assessment, we use different kinds of assessments with kids. Sometimes we'll give a diagnosis and then think about what is the best kind of treatment for kids, whether that's family therapy, individual therapy, or different kinds of modalities like cognitive behavioral therapy, psychotherapy, or a combination. And then we also want to work on preventing any future disturbances. So any future challenges that kids might have. And we really want to keep it like in the person and their environment perspective. So a lot of thinking about like, what is the family like? What is the home like? What is the school environment for the kids that are in our academy that we see? We get to see them in the academy, and so we get to see them in their school classroom and environment already. And we really, the big part is the relationship. So clinical social work is all about developing a therapeutic relationship with kids and using that relationship as the intervention to help kids feel comfortable, help them feel safe, help them understand their emotions and process them.
And with that, we're going to talk about kind of what social work looks like here at CPTWC. And that could be in so many different forms. It could be in individual services, one-on-one, group therapy. As you know, like I also run social emotional learning groups, which is SEL groups within the Academy of CPTWC. And we also run SIP Shop together, which is another form of group therapy. Parent support group, classroom support by pushing in, and social work can also look like just supporting you elsewhere outside of CPTWC, whether that be through like school consultations or like consultations with the doctor, or your psychiatrist, in all sorts of forms. And we'll just do a lot of fun activities together. And it's kind of like what Lo said, very relationship based. So just seeking to just see what they're liking, what they enjoy, and using that in a strength-based format. And we'll do a lot of gross motor, a lot of arts and crafts, a lot of mindfulness activities, and just like much more. And it's where we'll be just like creating that safe space for them to process and learn about their emotions and emotional regulation. And so with that, like what we do here is when you to us, we start off kind of with like a 4-week assessment to determine like if it's a good fit, if your child is a good fit for social work, and kind of move on from there. And it's designed to be a little bit more short term here than long term. And for indefinite services, we often refer to other practices as well.
So the big emotion coaching that Yeji mentioned is something that we sometimes use with our kids to help them kind of go through a process of understanding their feelings, because kids just don't know their feelings right off the bat. Like we are born biologically with understanding some emotions, but for kids who are neurodiverse, that is not always the case. or there's just challenges for kids. So we want to acknowledge the emotion, acknowledging what they're feeling, noticing that they are feeling something so that they feel seen and heard, labeling it so they understand when I feel this way or my body's doing this is the emotion that I'm probably feeling. So, you know, for some reason, for some kids, like they understand immediately, like when I'm crying, I feel sad.
Yeah.
Other kids might not. And so we want to label like, oh, you're crying. So it looks like you might be feeling sad. And then validating that is huge. We never want to tell kids like, don't feel sad, stop crying, like don't feel scared, because then that confuses them because they're like, wait, but I do feel scared. Is it wrong? And so we want to validate like, hey, this is normal that you're feeling this way. This is real. This is okay. And then help them problem solve. If they're crying because they fell down at the park, okay, what would help you feel better? Like, would taking a break help you feel better? Would mommy playing with you help you feel better? Just kind of trying to problem solve and then meet the need, acknowledging like, okay, maybe they need a little bit of extra comfort, or maybe they need to be encouraged to keep going and not be not kind of dwell in this feeling. So that's something that we use. It's a great tool. It's a good like kind of outline of like how we help kids understand their and move on from their emotions.
And just like let us know at any point if you have any questions or concerns as we go through just like our presentation today. And so with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about emotional processing, which is kind of the process by which like we absorb and understand stressful events, kind of like what Flo already prefaced. And why we do it is to help them gradually like reduce this emotional response over time by helping them understand and fully process what is going on, why they're feeling these feelings, and helping them kind of overcome them. So with that, like techniques that we would be using to help emotionally process them is just like using developmentally appropriate language, not making it so difficult, not making it so wordy, making it fit for their level of where they're at, and using affect and just like narrating the event, which Lo already beautifully said, like if something happens, like, oh, looks like you're feeling really sad, I see tears rolling down your face, which again is bringing that awareness in, right, of how they're feeling, because kids are starting to gain awareness. So we're like the feeling helpers, where we're helping them know, oh, this is what I'm feeling, and I probably need help in figuring out how to calm my feelings down. So, like what Lo said, just like labeling these feelings, and then connecting with the feelings, and then engaging the logical right side of the brain, kind of like what I just kind of gave an example for, like, oh, you look really sad, like you fell down, ouch, oh, but you're safe, like I'm helping, like let's get you some ice, like that solution. So that's a little intro to emotional processing.
Yeah. And then thinking about some of the areas that we can work with in social work, it is very wide. Like we see kids for a huge variety of things, anywhere from anxiety and depression to emotional regulation to big life changes, a divorce, a move, a school change, friend issues, death in the family. Basically, anything that you can think of that might be challenging for a kid, upsetting, is something that we can see. But specifically, this is kind of like an overview of what we can work with. So supporting that emotional development. So like AG and I just talked about, helping kids understand that. We do family therapy for, work on that parent-child connection, especially for kids under 6, helping parents feel attuned to their child, helping work through maybe some problem behaviors that are coming up at home that the parent is struggling to understand or, keep themselves regulated. We do a lot of healthy coping mechanisms. So we'll get into the emotional regulation for the second half of our presentation, but we do a lot of helping kids understand and develop their own kind of toolbox for working on some emotional regulation or coping mechanisms. Social skills is another big one, especially being here at the clinic and the academy. We're in a really unique setting for social work in that we are able to help kids work with their peers and work on social skills. So either we'll push into the classroom and help them during classroom activities. We'll be in the gym where there's other kids and help them practice some self-advocacy language. So, oh, can I have a turn? Or wait, I'm using that. Don't take it from me. Just helping them develop those social skills, or helping them learn how to play games with other kids and how to say good game after they lose, because that can be a challenge. And with that, building those positive peer relationships of, what does a friendship look like? What does it mean to be friends with someone? How do I start a friendship?
Yeah.
Work on those things. We have a couple kids who went off to kindergarten this year and needed some help with that. And it was so great to see them as they've gone through their kindergarten year, developing those friendships, talking about, oh, I've been playing with this kid at school. Another big area is crisis prevention or intervention. So if there are some of our kids who have suicidal ideation, self-injurious behavior, anything like that, anything there where they're a danger to self or danger to others, we also work with that. Obviously, if there is a risk of harm to the child or to someone else, we are mandated reporters, and so we will have to report that to people who can help the child feel safe and help the child and family maintain that safety. But we also can help them work through, because that's big feelings and those can feel scary for the family and the child. And so we do a lot of, the prevention, but also the intervention when it's already happening. Child advocacy. So like you mentioned, we also help with IEP meetings, 504 meetings. If a child is getting a neuropsych evaluation, we can talk to the psychiatrist about what we're seeing in the sessions. If there's problems at school, we talk to the teachers. We've even done school observations to figure out what's going on, if we're noticing some challenges at the school. And that is school-based intervention. So we don't typically go to the school more than once or twice a year for a child, but we can do observations in the classroom as long as the school allows it, so that we can understand the whole child in their environment. A lot of resources within the community. We love to, think of like what are some other play groups or activities that kids can do, music groups. I love to refer to the library for the many different groups that they have, and just thinking about what other resources would be good for this child and this family. Psychoeducation is a big thing that we do as well. It's all about helping a child and a family understand whether it's a diagnosis or a behavior or anything that they don't understand or need help understanding. An area of psychoeducation I've been doing lately is working with a kid, helping them understand what are helpful and unhelpful thoughts, and what helpful thoughts am I having, and what unhelpful thoughts have I been having. We do a lot of collaboration with multidisciplinary teams, whether that's within the team here or outside of the clinic. I feel like every week I'm meeting either with somebody from here that's on the team, either OT, speech, or PT, or the teachers or outside providers. So it's a lot of collaboration, because we recognize we're not usually the only provider helping a child, and we want to make sure not only are we not overlapping and the kid is getting too much therapy of the same thing, but also that we are using the different approaches that we can to help children. And then long-term care. If that's something that we recognize that a child needs, this is not always the best fit for long-term care. And so we think about where would that be a good fit? Like what kind of therapy does this child need for years and years to come? Because of this environment is just not always suited to that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Lo. And so with that, Lo kind of already said it, but just like what qualifies for treatment, like adjustment periods, which is, any life changes that happen, whether it's like, a family change, like maybe a birth of a sibling, maybe divorce, maybe you're moving somewhere, transitions to a new school or state. Those are kind of like adjustment periods, and just like mental health conditions, kind of like anxiety, like ADHD, depression, adjustment disorder, and developmental disabilities. Some major life changes, again, kind of like what we've mentioned before. Some school difficulties, maybe, whether it be difficulties with staying focused at school or having trouble with some of like their executive functioning, or it could be like socially related where just social relationships are hard within the school, and that's something that could qualify for treatment as well. Maybe there's some bullying going on. Parenting concerns, as Lo said, we can also provide a lot of like psychoeducation, and like family discord, conflict, navigating through that, like maybe grief and loss, maybe there was like a sudden death in the family, helping them process through that too. trauma, like poor self-esteem, just like difficulty with peer or family relationships, where again we kind of work on like the social aspects together, and the LGBTQ like support as well. So those are some things that qualify for the treatment. And
Yeah. And so when you think about those things, and or if your child is going through them, it's helpful to think about like, when do I need outside help? And so we like to think about it like, is there something going on that's new? Like, is there a change happening within the home, whether that's they have to transfer schools, or they're changing from elementary school to middle school, or middle school to high school. If there's a divorce or a separation, that can be really confusing for kids. Parents can handle it absolutely perfectly, and it's still really hard for kids. And so I always think that outside help would be good for that. If there's a new baby or a sibling, a foster child coming into the home, that can be confusing. Some children handle it no problem. Others need a little bit of help understanding, like, just because there's a new baby doesn't mean my parents love me any less. And so if there's a change happening outside of the home, maybe a distant family member is sick or a close family member is sick, if there's a death in the family, anyone is moving away, anything that is going to impact the child in their functioning, we like to think that's a good reason to kind of seek outside help. If there's new or challenging behaviors, if all of a sudden your kid has been doing super well with homework and all of a sudden is starting to refuse homework, there might be something going on that's worth talking to somebody about. It might not be a long-term thing. It might just be like, okay, all of a sudden, like, I'm getting bullied in school and I need to talk to somebody about it. And that's why I don't want to do my homework, because it reminds me of that. If there is anything like happening, like with the parent and child struggling to connect, if they are like, if you are struggling to understand your child, if you are struggling with their behavior, or if you're struggling to regulate your own emotions, definitely that's a great time to get someone involved, either your own therapist or or a therapist for your child, or to work on that parent-child relationship. So those are all great reasons. I mean, I think anybody could use a social worker, even if it's a short term or long term. It's really great to just have someone help process and understand things. So if your child is currently a client here, you could talk to their therapist for more information, whether it's speech therapist, BCBA, OTPT, or you can always reach out to the front desk to get more information. We do have a waiting list right now, depending on what time you have available for social work sessions. It's shorter rather than longer. After school times are always going to be the longest wait. But the front desk is definitely the best way to get information about getting on the waiting list for social work. Or you can always talk to your child's therapist. Yes. So now we are going to transition. Unless you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat at any point. But we are going to transition into talking about what is emotional regulation, because that is a big part of what we do with our kids, but also what we would do with our adults.
Definitely. And like Bo said, feel free to put the messages in. We are definitely looking and checking on it. So yeah, let us know and stop us whenever you have any questions or concerns. And on that note, what is, again, emotional regulation? It has been defined as the capacity just like to monitor and evaluate, modify like one's emotional state to achieve like a goal. And in that sense, it's the ability to really regulate emotions, be able to come back to regulation from that dysregulated state, and to be able to regulate, like kids need to be able to like identify like how they're feeling at that moment. Because when they're in high dysregulation, they just cannot like seem to understand like, this is what my body's feeling, I don't know what I was triggered by, like I don't know how to calm down, which is where emotional regulation comes in. And how adults react to a child's emotion teaches them a lot about their emotions too. And it also impacts like the development of their emotional intelligence, and just informs like of how else they're feeling. And so when we do like teach our kids to like identify their emotions, like we give them a framework, like this setting that helps them to understand this is how you're feeling, which makes it easier for kids to understand, oh, like this is how I can calm down, and oh, this is what I'm feeling. So because I'm feeling sad, this is what I can do. Like we're there to help them, right? So that's kind of a beginning of that. And
Yeah. So most people probably understand why emotional regulation is important, but you might not know all the things it impacts.
Mm,
Because kids need emotional regulation to be able to pay attention, listen for learning, sit still. Sometimes their bodies are, they need physical regulation and emotional regulation to be able to pay attention in the classroom. Um, Control impulses, that one is so important. If kids are struggling with their own frustration tolerance and a kid says, no, I'm not going to share this with you, and they can't regulate that frustration, oftentimes they're going to do something that's deemed socially inappropriate. So they're going to take the toy, they're going to yell, they're going to scream. And so we want to help them be able to regulate that frustration of like, okay, I understand I can't have this toy right now, I'll take a turn another time. And that is really important for taking turns in games, sharing toys, and expressing emotions for peers, being able to tell them like, hey, I had a lot of fun, or I didn't like that, and being able to regulate themselves enough to be able to say that in a way that is really pro-social and not in a way that's going to drive a wedge in that friendship. The other important thing is being able to reflect on behavior choices and the consequences to be able to deal with that in the future. And so recognizing like, okay, being able to connect the dots of like, okay, I felt mad. It's okay that I felt mad, but I threw something at mom. That's not okay. And being able to recognize like, okay, where did it go wrong? Like, where did my body get out of the window of tolerance? And where was I? How can I help myself in the future? That I'll say is a bit more mature approach to emotional regulation. We wouldn't expect kids to be able to do that until towards the end of elementary school, but we'll get into the development. And then the other thing is managing stress, being able to, by telling themselves like, I can handle my feelings. And so what Yeji was saying of like what the way adults react is really important is telling kids like your feelings are okay. Like they're not too much. We can handle them. And telling kids like it is okay that you feel this way. But how can we help your body kind of calm it down and feel this just a little bit less? And like I said, we'll get into the development, but also the adult part too.
for sure. And just with that, like helping children regulate emotions, like there's like this 3-step process where first we're helping children to identify the emotion. And like this can also be in moments when they are like dysregulated, and regulation too. It could be through like books, videos. Like sometimes we might be reading a book and I might be asking like my client like, oh, how do you think they're feeling? And just like that brings awareness, right? But also through videos, like, and that's such a natural way to talk about emotions and identifying them. Like say you're watching a show with your child or a movie, you could be like, oh, how do you think they're feeling? Like just natural moments like that. And that brings so much awareness and so much opportunities to identify emotions to them. It's a great learning experience. And just talking about your own emotions too is super important. I think not only does it normalize that we can feel all these feelings, but it helps like kids feel a lot safer in knowing, oh, mom and dad is feeling like mad. I guess it's okay for me to also feel mad. Like it's okay to feel all the range of emotions. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles kids have is thinking that they can only feel happy and all these positive emotions. And they do probably only want to feel happy because all the other feelings are really hard. Like it doesn't feel good in our bodies, but just normalizing, it's okay like to feel all the feelings. I feel mad sometimes, like you feel mad sometimes. It's all okay. So that's why it's really important that we also talk about our emotions, because children learn from us, just like what we said in our previous slide. And they'll come to learn that it's okay whether that feeling is big or small. It's okay to feel it all. Second, helping children identify their trigger to the emotion. That will be a big step in helping them emotionally regulate, because once they become more aware of like what their triggers are, like say I might be narrating, oh, it looks like, like you're clenching your fist, you're stomping your feet. Like those might be little triggers to a huge outburst. And that could be just like helping them figure out what happened, what should they pay attention to, like next time, like their body sensations, like what I did, like maybe it's a fist, maybe it's stomping on the ground, maybe it's your arms crossing, maybe it's your body is feeling really hot, or you're sweating, like body sensations like that. And just to help them understand, oh, that might be what's triggering you, again in a very like developmentally appropriate way. And then 3, teaching them just emotional regulation skills, and we will go deeper into like what kind of emotional regulation skills we can give to our child. And there are just so many various ways besides telling them, hey, let's take a deep breath. Like you could be so creative and beyond that. And we'll go on to that in the next slide.
Yeah. Another thing that might be that is helpful for kids is identifying like what might be what event kind of maybe triggered the feeling. So and it might be something they don't even recognize. Like maybe they'd be like, oh, you're feeling mad because they couldn't play with you today. Or maybe you're feeling sad because mommy was on the phone and you wanted her attention. Just helping them maybe connect the dots. And like, you can definitely get it wrong. Oftentimes they'll be like, I'm wondering if this is why you're feeling sad. And kids will be like, no, that's wrong. And I'm like, okay, I tried. And so it's like, and then that brings awareness to them of like, okay, that's not why I'm feeling this way. That's what it is. Or maybe they're like, wait a second, I don't feel anything, but like AJ was saying, I'm clenching my fists.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm doing that. So just helping kids connect those dots. But
definitely
some ways to regulate, there's lots of things. Like AJ said, I feel like our go-to is always take a deep breath. And for some kids, that makes them even more upset. So you just have to know. There's lots of different areas. So visually calming things, some things for them to look at that are distracting, but also calming. So we make a lot of sensory jars with kids. That's like a water bottle that we put a lot of glitter and beads in, and it goes slow. So they kind of slowly like calms them down, something to look at. A sand timer is another good one. Activities to that. So we do lots of blowing bubbles. We can color, listen to music, just something that will kind of help their body kind of slowly calm down. Comforting things. I feel like kids love to have a stuffy or a lovey nearby, offering hugs, but making sure that they know that they can hug you even when they're not upset. And so that we don't use physical touch only when they're dysregulated. So making sure there's opportunities for physical touch outside of there, but it can be a hug, it can be drawing on their back with your hands, it can be scratching their head, or if maybe they don't want to touch, maybe they just want to sit near you and just feel comforted and seen by that. Distraction is another one. So things that they can do without having to pay attention to what just happened. So painting is a big one. Whistling is a physical one. So it kind of makes their body focus on that. Dot to dot pictures. So drawing or like doing those diamond pictures that take a lot of focus. Anything that's going to make them feel like they can just forget for a minute what just happened. Physical activities are a big one. Jumping rope, jumping on a trampoline, anything to move their body, or pushing against a wall with their hands. And I always tell kids, I'm like, you're so strong, you can push this wall over right now. And just helping them like physically distract themselves, but also like get that frustration out of their body is really good. Stress balls and slime, great things to hold on to or squeeze. But also I often offer my hands because sometimes kids, when they're upset, can pinch or hit. But instead of offering your body in a way that like you're okay with and giving them consent of like, okay, do you need to squeeze my hands right now? Like that's okay. You're allowed to do that. And just helping them feel like it's okay that my body needs to squeeze something right now and kind of normalizing that. But another big one is the oral sensory thing. So chewing gum, apples, a crunchy snack, just helping their body kind of like work through that with the mind body connection.
Definitely. So with that, we're gonna kind of enter the development of emotional regulation. And on that note, just like how we're born with emotions, hardwired, we are also born with some emotional like regulation skills, and we learn the rest. So with that, like there's 2 kinds of emotional regulation, which is intrinsic and extrinsic. Where intrinsic is an individual's capability to regulate their own emotions, whereas extrinsic is when another person is helping them to regulate their emotions, which is like co-regulation. And with that, starting off with like like extrinsic in infancy, where infants are born with like a few biological skills to help them decrease that discomfort, whether they're communicating their needs to caregivers, where they're able to understand like how to help the baby, right? Like it might be them crying, it might be them like connecting their eye gaze towards you. And this is kind of the basis of an infant's attachment development. And also, but then in toddlerhood, it's where a child's ability to regulate their own emotion grows within this stage, where there's a lot of like self-soothing behaviors and avoiding tasks, self-distraction, and intrinsic ER truly begins as toddlers, and but they'll still need a lot of help from like us as caregivers and adults to regulate. And you could see a lot of this self-soothing through like maybe even like thumb sucking, seeking a lot of like co-regulation, like hugs and things like that. And we are going to continue on the development.
Yeah. So preschool age children, they start to get more and more emotional regulation skills, but they still need so much help. And I think we want to talk about the development so that parents can have a better understanding of what is normal, like what can I expect my child to be able to do, and where are my expectations too high or too low. And so when they're in preschool, they are starting to learn more about what are the words for emotion. So that's where the labeling comes into handy, because they're going to learn words from somewhere and you want them to learn them correctly. So learning them from school and from parents are great help. Understanding the basic emotions, so happy, mad, sad, sleepy, surprised, that kind of stuff, the really basic ones. We don't want to get too complicated at this when they're in the preschool age. They're still developing heavily on parent emotional regulation and co-regulation. How parents model on their own emotional regulation and regulating kids' emotions is really crucial during this preschool age time, because they're starting to soak everything up. But they need a lot of comfort, a lot of soothing, a lot of co-regulation. They're starting to learn some very, very simple emotional regulation strategies, such as deep breathing, counting to calm down. But anything that is bigger than what can be solved with a deep breath or counting, they're going to need your help. So if it's something like, oh, I stubbed my toe, let me take a deep breath, preschoolers can start to handle that. Anything more than something really small like that, they're not going to be able to do it on their own. And we can't expect them to be able to do it on their own. We can't expect them to be able to, if they have a huge scrape, calm down by themselves. They're going to need a parent or a caregiver's comfort and validation. As they get into elementary age, we're going to start to see them be able to take more of that on their own. They gain more awareness of the triggers that we were talking about, like what's bothering me, why does that, maybe there's a kid who has bullied them in the past, and so that can be a trigger for them. They start to kind of put those dots together. They also understand the consequences of like, okay, if I cry in school, kids are going to look at me funny. Or if I yell, mom and dad, take away my iPad or whatever it is. They start to understand the consequences. They also are starting to gain the skills more, such as self-talk, being able to engage in positive self-talk, work themselves through things. But they also need help still. Like we want to give them credit of like emotional elementary age kids can learn a lot, but they still need help. They're starting to develop more of a sense of emotional control. They want more independence from caregivers. That just because they want it doesn't mean they always need it. Like they sometimes their brains like kind of go against themselves, and they're like, oh, I want to seem older than I really am. But they're still going to need a hug. They're going to still need you to validate their feelings. They still need you to help them experiment with different coping skills. Help them try new things. Give them suggestions. They don't know. These aren't intrinsic things. This is a lot of extrinsic learning, because at this point, these is all things that they're going to be modeled from other kids, from teachers, from parents. And so we want the parents to be able to model things like we went over a couple slides ago, to help them learn new things, try new things, be like, okay, this really works. Squeezing a stress ball really works. Blowing bubbles doesn't work.
And with that, emotional regulation and autism. And we're going to talk about kind of how autism can, but again, not always impact emotional regulation. And with that, like some sensory sensitivities that could lead and trigger to heightened emotional responses could be one thing. Difficulty kind of verbalizing and understanding emotions in themselves is as well as others is another thing. And they may also have like rigid kind of patterns of thinking, as seen through kind of their difficulty to adapt to changes in their schedule, like unexpected things, which could provoke, anxiety and a lot of emotional distress, honestly. It could also have like difficulty understanding kind of social cues, impacting their emotional like interpretation, that then kind of troubles into forming and maintaining these like social relationships which could also lead again to feeling isolated and just like very frustrated and like lonely. Um, there's also just like their executive functioning that gets impacted with just like the impaired like planning and problem solving skills that kind of affect using and accessing their coping skills. So again, these are some things that can appear, but not always. Again.
Yeah. So we've talked about it a lot, but we just wanted to dedicate our last 2 slides to the role of adults because it's so important for kids. This is going to be their primary role models for emotional expression and regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So how a parent, and mostly parent, especially before they go to school, but how a parent talks about feelings and how a parent demonstrates emotional regulation in themselves and helping kids coach through that, really setting the foundation for everything for them. No pressure though, because it's like there are other adults. So, and especially here, the teachers at the academy are incredible. The therapists here are incredible, do such a great job of talking about feelings. And so you're not alone. But children learn so much by observing how adults manage and express their emotions. Being able to, what we were talking about earlier, being able to accept their feelings helps kids understand, like, I am okay. Like, my feelings are not too much for anyone. Mom's feelings aren't too much for anyone. Like, if mom can handle this, I can handle this. Yeah. If mom says it's okay to feel sad, it means it's okay to feel sad. And just that really helps kids learn. Responsive caregiving promotes secure attachment, which is so foundational for emotional regulation. So what that means is, when, I'm sure when all of you had your infants that you're like, we have to attend to them as soon as they're crying. It's kind of the same thing now. When a child is crying, you have to provide the responsive caregiving, helping them see and know, like, okay, when I'm upset, mom and dad come and care for me. Or when I'm looking like a little bit sad, maybe I'm not crying, maybe they're like sad, or maybe they're quieter. So showing that responsiveness promotes that secure attachment, which means that like they feel loved, known, safe, secure in their parent-child relationship, which helps them feel their feelings, feel safe to feel their feelings in relationship with other people. When you give consistent emotional support, it helps children to feel safe to express and manage their feelings. Basically what I was just saying, when like we want kids to feel safe feeling their feelings, because that helps them regulate it. It feels a little bit counterintuitive, because you're like, oh, if they feel safe feeling their feelings, it'd be bigger. But if they feel safe, it's able to become much more manageable. And it's so helpful for adults to guide children in understanding the causes and consequences of emotion. So, that cause and effect that we were talking about, like, okay, what is the trigger? Is it a biological trigger? Is it an outside trigger? Is it, my friend? Is it my parent? Is my sibling? Is it, I'm just in a bad mood? And validating, like, sometimes you wake up on the wrong side of bed and you need to just kind of change your attitude around. But also, what are the consequences of the reactions that you have? We never want to say consequences to, because you're feeling mad, you're taking away the iPad. You're allowed to feel mad. You can't throw things at mom. So we're going to take a break from the iPad. Or, you're feeling sad, totally fine. We can't scream when the baby is sleeping. So we're going to, go for a walk to help our body feel calm. Helping them connect the dots and recognizing it is okay to feel the feeling. Yeah, I could say that a million times. It's okay to feel the feeling. What we have to work on is what they do with the feeling. And I tell that to everyone I work with. And then also the super important role of adults is helping them understand other feelings. So helping them see, okay, mommy's feeling sad because she had a stressful day, in traffic trying to pick you up from school. Mommy needs a minute to take a sip of water. Can you go play with your toys? Helping them recognize your feelings so that they can do it with their friends. And I think this image that I found this morning is so helpful for understanding the role of adults, because your emotional regulation is so important. So everything we've been talking about with the child's emotional regulation still applies to adults. If a child is dysregulated but an adult is regulated, you're going to have a regulated child. But if you yourself are dysregulated when your child is dysregulated, it's not going to go well. I'm sure you guys have all experienced that. Like when you lose your cool, when you yell, and you're like, wait, this actually didn't help anybody. Yeah. And even if you're having a hard time and the child is totally calm, that's going to mean the child is no longer calm. And so thinking about, how can I help my child stay regulated? Like, you guys are going to match affects, you're going to match the regulation. And so making sure that you're able to stay calm yourself, you're able to stay regulated, you are able to stay within your own window of tolerance, so that you can help your child get back into that window of tolerance. So I know we said a lot, so feel free to put any questions in the chat. But otherwise, we are so happy to talk about these things anytime, whether your child is involved in social work or not. You can reach out to the front desk with any questions. But yeah, we're so happy that you guys came today.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed our presentation. And, if you guys have any questions right now, feel free to post them and we can talk about it. Or, feel free to reach out to us or front office.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.